When everything falls apart around you, when the noise dies down and the crowd disappears, that's when a woman discovers something profound. She learns that having God alone isn't losing everything. It's finding everything she never knew she needed. The world tells women they need approval, validation, endless support systems, and constant connection to survive. But what happens when all of that crumbles? When the phone stops ringing, when the invitations stop coming, when the people you thought would stand by you simply walk away? That's when real faith begins. Number 1, isolation becomes her sanctuary. When a woman finds herself with no one but God, something sacred happens in that silence. The constant chatter that once filled her days fades away. The opinions that used to shape her decisions lose their power. And in that quiet space, she finally hears the voice that matters most. This isn't abandonment, this is appointment. God doesn't remove people from your life to punish you. He clears the room so you can hear him clearly. Think about it. How many times have you missed God's whisper because everyone else was shouting their advice? How many divine directions did you overlook because you were too busy listening to voices that were never meant to guide you? When isolation hits, it feels crushing at first. The emptiness seems overwhelming. But that emptiness isn't a void to be feared. It's a vessel waiting to be filled. And when God fills it, you realize that his presence was what you were searching for in all those other connections that failed you. Number 2, she discovers strength she never knew existed. When a woman has no one but God, she stops looking for strength in all the wrong places. No more depending on others to carry her through. No more waiting for someone else to validate her worth. She learns that the power she needs was inside her all along, placed there by the one who created her. The pressure that once broke her spirit now forges it into something unbreakable. Every challenge that used to send her running to others for rescue becomes an opportunity to see God's power work through her weakness. She stops seeing herself as fragile and starts understanding that she's fearfully and wonderfully made. This isn't about becoming hard or bitter. It's about becoming whole. There's a difference between independence that pushes everyone away and dependence on God that makes you strong enough to love without losing yourself. When you know your source, you can give without being drained. You can love without being desperate. You can stand without needing applause. Number 3, her prayer life transforms completely. Before, prayer might have been a quick conversation, a desperate plea, or maybe just words spoken out of habit. But when God becomes your only companion, prayer becomes your lifeline. It shifts from asking for things to simply being with him. You start talking to God like he's right there in the room with you, because he is. You share your fears, your dreams, your random thoughts throughout the day. You learn to wait for his response instead of rushing to fill the silence with your own voice. Prayer stops being a religious exercise and becomes the most natural conversation you've ever had. And here's what's beautiful about this transformation. You realize that God isn't just listening. He's responding. Not always in the ways you expect, but in ways that are perfect for what you need. Sometimes it's the page. Sometimes it's through through a verse that jumps off sudden peace, that settles over your heart. Sometimes it's through doors opening that you never even knocked on. Number 4, she learns the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is feeling empty because others aren't there. Solitude is feeling full because God is. When a woman has no one but God, she discovers that being alone with him isn't punishment, it's privilege. The world has convinced women that being alone means being unwanted, unworthy, or unsuccessful. But what if being alone with God means being chosen for something special? What if the season of solitude is actually preparation for a purpose that requires complete trust in him? In those quiet moments, she learns to enjoy her own company because she's keeping company with the divine. She finds peace in the stillness because she's no longer afraid of what she might discover about herself. She realizes that the woman God created her to be is someone worth knowing, someone worth loving, someone worth celebrating. Number 5, provision comes from unexpected places. When human support systems crumble, God's provision shows up in the most surprising ways. It might be the check that arrives right when the bills are due. It could be the job opportunity that appears out of nowhere. Sometimes it's the strength to get through one more day when you thought you had nothing left. But provision isn't just about money or material needs. It's about emotional sustenance, spiritual nourishment, and mental clarity. When you can't call anyone for advice, God's wisdom becomes your guide. When you can't lean on anyone for comfort, His peace becomes your pillow. When you can't find anyone to celebrate with, His joy becomes your party. This is where faith moves from theory to reality. You stop talking about trusting God and start actually doing it. You witness firsthand that His word is true, that His promises are real, that His love is sufficient for every need you have. Number 6, she develops unshakable confidence. When a woman survives having no one but God, she emerges with a confidence that can't be touched by human opinion. She's walked through the fire and discovered that God's presence was with her every step of the way. That knowledge changes everything. She stops seeking validation from people who were never qualified to determine her worth. She quits performing for applause that was never meant to define her identity. She realizes that the approval she was chasing externally was already hers internally, stamped by the creator of the universe. This confidence isn't arrogance, it's assurance. It's knowing who you are because you know whose you are. It's walking into rooms differently because you're not looking for someone to complete you. You're already whole. It's speaking up when you need to because your voice matters. Not because someone else said it does, but because God gave it to you for a purpose. The woman who emerges from this season isn't the same one who entered it. She's been refined, strengthened, and prepared for whatever God has next. She's learned that having God alone isn't the consolation prize. It's the grand prize. And once you've tasted that kind of relationship with Him, everything else becomes secondary. So if you're in that place right now, if you're facing the silence and feeling the weight of isolation, don't despair. You're not being forgotten. You're being prepared. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the most important chapter you'll ever write. Number 7, her worship becomes authentic worship. When everything else falls away and God is all that remains, a woman's worship transforms from performance to passion. She's no longer singing because others are watching or praying because it's expected. Her worship flows from a heart that has experienced God's faithfulness in the deepest valleys. This is where worship stops being about the music, the atmosphere, or the crowd around you. It becomes about the relationship. You find yourself praising Him while doing dishes, thanking Him during your morning coffee, and worshiping Him in the silence of your bedroom. Your whole life becomes an act of worship because you've tasted what it means to have nothing but Him and discovered that He's everything. The tears that fall during these moments aren't tears of sadness. They're tears of recognition. You finally see Him for who He really is, not who religion told you He was or who others described Him to be. You meet Him personally, intimately, and that encounter changes how you approach Him forever. Number 8, she stops fearing abandonment. When you've walked through the season of having no one but God and survived, the fear of people leaving loses its grip on you. You realize that the worst thing you thought could happen, being alone, actually became the best thing that ever happened to you. This doesn't mean you stop caring about relationships or that you become cold toward others. It means you stop holding on to people out of fear and start loving them from freedom. You're no longer desperate for connection because you found the ultimate connection. You don't cling to friendships that drain you because you know your source of strength. When someone walks away, it hurts, but it doesn't destroy you. When opportunities disappear, it disappoints you, but it doesn't define you. You've learned that God's love is the only love that never fails, never leaves, and never runs out. Everything else is addition, not foundation. Number 9, she hears God's voice with crystal clarity. The noise of other voices used to drown out God's whisper. But when those voices fade, His becomes unmistakable. You start recognizing His tone, His timing, His gentle correction, and His loving encouragement. You learn the difference between his voice and your own thoughts, between his leading and your own desires. This isn't about hearing audible voices or having supernatural visions. It's about developing spiritual sensitivity. You notice when peace settles over a decision versus when anxiety follows it. You recognize when doors open smoothly versus when you're forcing them. You understand when he's saying yes, when he's saying no, and when he's saying wait. The woman who learns to hear God clearly becomes dangerous to the enemy's plans. She can't be misled by false prophets because she knows her shepherd's voice. She can't be manipulated by people with hidden agendas because she's learned to check everything against what God is telling her. She moves with confidence because she's moving with divine direction. Number 10. Her identity becomes unshakable. When everyone else's opinion fades away, God's opinion becomes the only one that matters. And his opinion of you never changes based on your performance, your mistakes, or your circumstances. His love is constant, his acceptance is complete, and his view of your worth is settled. The woman who discovers this truth stops trying to earn what she already has. She stops performing for love that's already freely given. She stops apologizing for taking up space in a world where and that she's not God specifically placed her. She understood an accident, not a burden, and not a mistake. This unshakable identity affects every area of her life. She makes decisions based on who God says she is, not who others want her to be. She pursues dreams that align with her divine purpose, not just what looks impressive to the crowd. She sets boundaries that protect her peace because she values what God values in her. Number 11. She becomes a safe haven for others. Ironically, the woman who learns to be alone with God becomes the one others want to be around. There's something about her presence that brings peace. Something about her words that carry weight. Something about her spirit that offers rest to those who are weary. She's not trying to fix everyone because she knows that's God's job. She's not desperately seeking attention because she's already found it in him. She listens without judgment because she's experienced grace. She loves without conditions because she's been loved unconditionally. She gives without keeping score because her account with God is never empty. People are drawn to authenticity, and nothing is more authentic than a woman who has been refined in the fire of isolation and emerged knowing who she is. She becomes a lighthouse for others who are lost at sea. Not because she's trying to be seen, but because God's light shines through her so brightly that it's impossible to miss. The woman who survives having no one but God doesn't just survive, she thrives. She doesn't just endure, she overcomes. She doesn't just get through, she gets stronger. And when she looks back on that season, she doesn't see it as the worst time of her life. She sees it as the time when her real life began. This journey isn't easy, but it's necessary. It strips away everything that isn't essential and reveals everything that is. It removes what was temporary and establishes what's eternal. It takes away what was failing and gives what will never fail. If you're walking through this season right now, feeling like the walls are closing in and the silence is deafening, know this. You're not forgotten. You're not forsaken. You're being forged. Every tear that falls in private is seen. Every prayer whispered in desperation is heard. Every moment when you feel like giving up is exactly when breakthrough is closest. The woman who emerges from this wilderness won't be the same one who entered it. She'll carry scars that tell stories of survival. She'll have wisdom only come from walking through fire. That can possess a peace that doesn't make sense to those who've never faced the storm alone. Your current chapter of isolation isn't the end of your book. It's the turning point where everything changes. Where weakness becomes strength. Where fear becomes faith. Where having nothing becomes having everything that truly matters. So stand firm in this season. Let the silence teach you. Let the solitude shape you. Let the struggle strengthen you. Because when God is all you have, you're about to discover that God is all you need. And that discovery will change everything about how you see yourself, your circumstances, and your future. The woman who knows she can survive with God alone fears nothing this world can take from her. She walks differently. She speaks differently. She loves differently. She lives differently. Because she's tasted what it means to be completely dependent on the one who will never leave her, never forsake her, and never let her down. Your season of solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation for something greater than you can imagine, for a purpose that requires this level of surrender, for a calling that demands this depth of trust, for a future that needs this foundation of faith. Don't rush through this process. Don't try to shortcut the journey. Don't fill the silence with noise just because it's uncomfortable. Let God do what only He can do in the quiet places of your heart. Let Him heal what needs healing. Let Him remove what needs removing. Let Him build what needs building. The woman on the other side of this season will thank you for enduring. She'll be grateful you didn't give up when it got hard. She'll appreciate that you chose to trust when you couldn't see. She'll understand that having no one but God wasn't the worst thing that could happen to you. It was the best thing that ever did. So here's the truth that changes everything. When a woman discovers she can stand with God alone, she realizes she was never truly alone at all. She was being prepared for a love so deep, a purpose so clear, and a strength so unshakable that everything else becomes secondary. If you're in that season right now, where the silence feels overwhelming and the isolation cuts deep, don't fight it. Embrace it. This isn't God punishing you. This is God positioning you for something extraordinary. The woman who emerges from this fire won't just survive her circumstances. She'll transform them. You're not being forgotten in the quiet. You're being refined. You're not being abandoned in the solitude. You're being appointed. The very thing that feels like loss is actually preparation for the greatest gain of your life. Because when you truly know that God is enough, you fear nothing this world can take from you. Drop a comment saying, "He is enough," if this resonates with your spirit. And if you know a woman who needs to hear this message, share it with her. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the reminder that their current chapter isn't their final story. God's not finished writing yet.